Hello, everybody. Tracy, Mrs. JDog Flanagan here with you today. I'm the co-founder and senior vice president at JDog Brands. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Tactical Treasures powered by JDog. Our podcast gives veterans, male spouses, active military members, and military family members a voice in the veteran space to speak about their service, how they're affecting their communities post-service, and a tactical treasure from their past that has shaped their journey in their military career, business, or life. Today, I am so excited to have joining us today is Brian Slade. Brian has held command positions in the Army and the Air Force with over 25 years of combined service, and he has received the Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star, and 14 Combat Air Medals for his outstanding service. He attended Utah State, where he earned his bachelor's and was commissioned as an Army Aviation Second Lieutenant. He also earned an MA in Aviation Instruction. Brian currently serves as Lieutenant Colonel for Air Force Combat Search and Rescue. Welcome, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to speak with you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. JDog. I am happy to be here.
So, what inspired you to go into the military? What an amazing career you've had, Army and the Air Force. I would love to hear about how that came about and what inspired you to join.
You know, joining the military, I'd love to have this amazing, inspirational story, but really, it boils down to three things. I was patriotic, true, yes. I needed some way to pay for school, yes. I also needed something to fill my adrenaline fix need. So the military seemed to fit all three of those categories. And so it was kind of a natural fit. At the time, it was a means to an end. I had no idea I was going to make a career out of it. I had no intention of making a career out of it, to be honest.
Wow. So so you joined the Army first, correct? And then you shifted over to the Air Force. And what was that experience like, starting in the Army and then transitioning to the Air Force?
Well, I mean, I have a little bit of occupational ADD. I started as an enlisted man and it ended up being a diesel mechanic, and made it to being selected for E6. And at that point is when I decided to go the commission route. And I went through the ROTC program at Utah State, as you mentioned, participating in the simultaneous membership program, which actually amplified the benefits for school, being both enlisted and in the officer training program. And then from there is where I commissioned and then went on to learn to fly the Apache in the Army. And that's the aircraft that is chronicled in my book, Cleared Hot. So that's the Army part of it. So, and then from after that is when it was a really long deployment. It was like 23 months total. And I had a new marriage and it really struggled and was on the rocks, which is something that I go into as well. But, in an attempt to try to salvage that, I said, well, then I'll go to the Air Force, where the deployments are, 3 or 4 months instead of, a year to 18 months, in my case, 23 months.
Right. And is there a specific aspect of your service, either in the Army or the Air Force, that kind of had a significant impact on you? All of it, right?
So many, yes.
Yeah.
That's why I decided to write a book. I was like, I have so many, I need to put it down somewhere, right? The military affords us very unique opportunities to be, by choice, put in positions that you're going to experience and see things that you probably wouldn't in any other capacity. And I mean, obviously, it's dependent of your job and dependent of timing and dependent of a lot of things, but that possibility is there, right? And as that possibility being there was definitely a factor for me, I found myself in tons of crazy experiences where at the end of the day, or at the end of the deployment, as it were, I mean, I've done several deployments now, but at the end of that first one, I was like, wow, this is, real. We've read about war. We've seen war. But now experiencing it and its intensity, at least from my seat, was very educational, and very mind opening as far as perspective goes. Taught me to appreciate a lot of things, and taught me to honestly taught me to take traumatic events and grow from them. You know.
Right, right. So that's kind of what inspired you to write your book. And so is that kind of what made you think about authoring a book about your experiences?
It absolutely is. As time marches on, you start to appreciate those lessons more, right? And you start to see them more.
Sure.
A lot of times we learn things and we even apply the lessons from them, but we didn't really categorize it as a lesson learned until we look back on it. And when we look back on it, we're like, oh, that's where I learned that. And that's a powerful, impactful lesson that I learned from a very crazy situation. And as I started to notice there was more and more of those type of situations, and then I started to take note of the people that had deployed with me, and not everybody was experiencing the same level of growth or, taking that experience and having it be like a good thing in their life as I was. And so that started me to question. One, it started me to question myself. I'm like, why
Sure.
is this not hurting me as much as it's hurting other people? Am I a psychopath? And that was a legitimate question that I asked mental health people. I'm like, I'm a little concerned
Sure.
that I'm not more concerned, and they're like, the fact that you're worried about it means you're probably not a psychopath, you know.
Yeah, right.
Um, but it was something that raised the flag for me, and as I started to really digest uh, with these professionals what had happened, and really kind of I wanted to figure out why I experienced this growth, and so did other guys. I wasn't the only one, but some guys experienced growth, some guys experienced basically nothing, and other guys are way on the other end of the spectrum where it appears life isn't even worth living at that point, right? Same
Right.
stimulus, significantly different outcomes. And for me, that was curious. And so we started to sit down with, all the individuals that have letters behind their names, and try to digest it and figure out if there was things in my day to day or my background or my upbringing or my whatever that facilitated that growth. And we did find some, and we focused on the ones that we could teach. Like there's some things that
Sure.
you can't teach. You
Yeah.
come to this earth with a personality. That's your personality. You come to this earth to a family that may or may not be nuclear. That's what you have, right? You come to this earth and you may experience certain types of abuses as a kid or whatever, or you may not. Those things I can't change, so we don't really focus as much on those. Although the techniques that we do focus on to building a resilient mind, one
Mm.
that will experience growth from traumatic events, also works to heal from those past experiences should you have had them, right? And that wasn't my intent. I just wanted to figure out why it worked. But as
Right.
we got down there, we're like, okay, here's some of the things you were doing. This is why it helped you. Then I start asking questions. Well, is that teachable? Yeah, that's teachable. And if I teach somebody that's already experienced not the growth, but the damage, what will that do? And so in an effort to focus on how to prepare, we also found something that will work for prepare as well as repair.
Right. Right. So, yeah, we're all wired differently, right? And I guess we react to things in our lives very differently and uniquely. But I understand that you are also developing a curriculum that's going to be accredited at the college level. Um, is is this what you're speaking about now? This curriculum that you've developed, and what will it
I'm super
teach?
excited about it. I'm not really speaking about it hugely yet because it isn't done.
Oh, okay.
um, but it is going to be. And the curriculum is just part of it. So there's a curriculum, and then there's also what I'm going to call a boot camp / container type training where people come in person, and we've had great, it's a training that exists already. um and I've been through it myself, and I was like, I saw how powerful it was. In 3 to 4 days you take people and you turn trauma into triumph. That's just what you do. Like, You help them categorize it where it needs to be categorized, and it becomes a foundational piece rather than an obstacle that's in their current path, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw this and I'm like, wow, these are people that have been, some of these people have been with counselors and therapists for years and haven't been able to figure this out. But the 3 to 4 day training, depending on which training it is, was able to do that in 3 to 4 days. And then then I was curious. I was like, well, does it stay? Does it have staying power? Because anybody can get amped and excited in 3 to 4 days and think they got everything figured out.
Sure.
But does it have staying power? And what really impacted me and made me want to build something like this for military first responder types is that a year later, I kept contact with a lot of these individuals, and it does have staying power. And that's without an accountability program built to it. Ours is going to have an accountability program built to it too. So I just to ensure, create a community that supports itself and energizes itself to stay in that positive experience of life. And so that I'm excited about both of those things. I really, I think it's going to make a big impact in a lot of people's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And your book, I mean, you've gotten quite awesome accolades on your book, even by General Petraeus.
Yeah.
I think that's really awesome. Veterans, military family members, if you're looking for an incredible opportunity, I would encourage you to check out JDogBrands.com. If you're interested in business ownership, if you're missing what was the best thing about your military service, being the camaraderie of fellow veterans, JDog is a place for you. If you go to JDogBrands.com, you can find out everything about JDog, including how to apply for franchise opportunities in either JDog Junk Removal and Hauling or our new division, Carpet Cleaning and Floor Care. And if you're looking to just be employed by a JDog, we have over 300 locations, close to 115 franchise owners, 90% veteran owned. You can go to the career page and fill out the form and see where we're hiring all across the country. And we connect you with your local JDog in your territory. So check us out, JDogBrands.com. Let's dive into your treasure. What is your treasure that you would like to share with us today?
Yeah, well, you guys asked me that question before, and I was like, I've had a lot of things that I would consider treasure, but if we're talking about from a combat situation, I'll share the story of my first contact with the enemy. Because it's like your first kiss or your first love, or you remember that one pretty vividly, right?
Sure.
And so I've been in Afghanistan for a couple months. There have been people getting into engagements with the Taliban, with the Apache. I hadn't yet to experience. Now we've been called out on several troops in contact missions where they were taking contact as we roll in, Taliban disappears. We didn't really go kinetic on anything. It was just, it was kind of like, get there, get it amped, and you don't even break through the paper in the football game. You go back in the locker room, right? So that's kind of what we did multiple times. And on this one, I got to the point where I felt like I was more leaning that that's probably going to happen versus the other. And as we rounded this corner of this big slot canyon, you could call it a valley, but it was really steep, probably 300 feet deep. There were shelves on either side. On one side of the shelf, there was a convoy that had been ambushed with an IED. The lead vehicle had been struck, and so the whole convoy was stopped on this cliff. I mean, it's on a road, but it's on the top of this cliff,
Sure.
And taking fire. And their call sign was Titan. I remember that. And as we rolled in, we're like, Titan, what's your situation? They gave us the situation report, told us they were taking fire from unknown areas, but they thought multiple locations. And I'm like, are you still taking fire? And they said, yes, we are. And so that was new. Usually when the Apaches roll in, they stop taking fire, right? I'm like, oh, they're still taking fire. Okay, let's figure out where it's at, And so now we can actually develop this situation. So they thought they were taking fire from the other side of the ridge line. So we started to we got it into what's called a high-low bird. There were two Apaches, one above us, and then me and my pilot I was the co-pilot gunner on this one, and then I had a CW4 in the back, right? And through the book, it's kind of interesting. I have a journey of growth in the pilot seat. I have a journey of leadership. I have a journey of all these different things. It literally is boy becomes man in many different aspects. But this was this was a boy moment, we'll just say.
Oh,
And and as we're flying, this experienced aviator is in the back and he's doing his thing. And I'm looking through the tactical acquisition display and trying to find this enemy and rocks, crevices, trees, all this. It's really hard to find them, and muzzle
yeah.
flashes are very difficult to see during the daytime. So we're trying. I don't have tons of combat experience either at this point. So I'm like, okay, I'm trying to develop it, working with the ground guys. They're talking back and forth, back and forth. And we're getting more and more aggressive because we're kind of feeling that frustration. They're still taking fire. We're there and we're not affecting it. It's frustrating. So
Sure.
Doug, my pilot, he just started to get more and more lower and slower and trying to find these guys. And at one point, we're probably 15 to 20 feet over this cliff's edge and pretty slow. I don't know how fast, but we weren't moving very fast. So basically, we're a pretty good target, right, at that point. And as we just started to come out over the cliff's edge, so that 15 to 20 feet turned to about 300 feet, we got rocked, like big time. Like the whole aircraft lifted up. There was a thunder pound that just basically reverberated through my guts, teeth, everything. And the aircraft is now falling down into that canyon.
Oh,
I can
wow.
see the rock. I'm like, we are going to hit that rock. And, all these things are flashing through my head in a moment. And I thought we were done. Like we're not flying. We're falling. That's where we're going to crash. Then it goes into, what are we going to do once we hit? Well, if I survive, I'm going to try to get out. I'm going to get my radio. I'm going to get my gun. I'm going to get Doug. I'm going to, so all these things in like a fraction of a second are happening. And then as we fall, Doug being the champion that he is and a pilot with experience knew that we were actually still flying. I mean, we still had the spinny thing spinning like it's supposed to. What happened is an RPG had exploded below us, had created this dirty air that we were unable to bite with our rotors. And so it created this vortex that we were falling through, right? Once we get through it into clean air, which he was manipulating the controls to make sure that we did get there, now we're flying again and he recovers. And I'm like, oh, wow, we're still alive, because I was at that point, I was like, this sucks. First fight, we get in, first shot, I lose. That's not a Dear Diary moment, right?
Yeah.
And so then we roll back up. And as we roll back up, I start to realize that I had been seeing muzzle flashes. They were just like little peripheral flash things that I hadn't categorized them as muzzle flash until, and it just kind of clicked. And I'm like, wait, I'm seeing muzzle flash. I see it, right? And so then I verified with the ground commander, you got nobody on this side. He's like, yeah, no, there's nobody over there. And I tell Doug, I'm seeing muzzle flash. He's like, then shoot him, right? And so I do. I have the 30 millimeter and I just start shooting the muzzle flashes. And it was very impactful because up until that point, I had pulled the trigger many, many times, but it was always on targets. It was never on people. It was never on live. Yeah, they're enemy, but it was never on people. And I knew when I pulled that trigger and I blew up all those muzzle flashes, the people just died. I just killed those people, right?
Yeah.
And in that moment, it hit me, but it was like, hit, move on. Next one, next one, next one, right? Because you have to be, right? But it was impactful and it definitely felt different. Like trigger squeeze is exactly the same mechanically, but it felt different, right? So we continued to develop that situation, ended up almost in the exact same spot, doing the exact same thing, which I think there's a definition for people who do the same thing and expect a different result. And we got the same result and we got rocked again. This time, chunks of rock are hitting our canopy because they actually hit the cliffside right below us. I thought it was chunks of us at the time. They're hitting us. We're falling again. Now I have like 10-minute-old wisdom now. So I check the engine page and I'm like, oh yeah, we're still spinning. We can fly out of this thing. And he does, and he flies back out of it. And, and I'm like, Doug, there's no way we're taking fire from the same side when it keeps hitting us there. That RPG is on the other side of the canyon, which we were able to figure out where it was at, destroy that, continue to engage the enemy. And at the end of the day, we did suppress the enemy and kill the enemy to the point where Titan was able to clear their path and leave. Now, I tell that story because it leads to my treasure. Several days later, I think almost a week or so later, I was in the chow hall at Jalalabad. And I'm a lieutenant at this point, young officer, trying to be all he can be. And a guy comes in the mess tent, he's got an M4 slung, and he says, "Is anyone here Iron 1-6?" Right. And that's my call sign. And I was like, "Oh crap, what did I do? I'm in trouble now."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, over here," and I didn't know it. As he got closer, I saw he's a captain. So, I stood up, "Hey, sir, what can I help you with?" And he goes, "You Iron 1-6 got an engagement in this valley, the other, and I'll walk through it." I'm like, yeah, that was me. He goes, "I'm Titan 06." He was the commander of that unit. And he goes, "I wanted to stop here and thank you personally because we were in a really bad situation. We were pinned down and we didn't know where the enemy was, and we were taking effective fire from multiple points of origin. And you guys rolled in, were patient, figured it out, put yourself in danger, and eventually fixed our situation so that we could get out safely." And I was like, "Well, I appreciate that, sir. That's what we do. That's our job, right?" And
Right.
then he goes, "I'd like to give you these coins, one for me, one for the other pilots that were involved." And I've received coins from 4-star general. I've received coins from all over the place. This is a coin from a captain and company commander who took the time to make a stop because of the impact that we were able to have on his situation. So that is my
Yeah. Well, that's really, really
that,
special.
that is my favorite coin, and that is one of my treasures.
Well, that's an awesome treasure. But, you know, you and your team did a great thing that day. You saved their lives. And that goes a long way and means something. So, that's a very emotional, very incredible story. So,
Yeah, from
thank you.
there I was able, Apache guys and ground guys have a very unique connection.
Yeah, I'm sure. You guys fly in and save the day, I'm sure, a lot. And
Well,
thank you for sharing that story.
it's that I have just the utmost respect for those guys because they are the guys that are down there.
Yeah,
They are the guys that said, "I'll do this part."
right. Yeah, very, very special. Thank you for sharing that story. Hello, viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in to this exciting episode of Tactical Treasures. We've been speaking with Brian Slade, who held command positions in the Army and the Air Force over 25 years of combined service. He is the author of this book called Cleared Hot. And Cleared Hot offers readers an exhilarating ride while giving them tools they can use to prepare for and survive the traumas of their own lives. Cleared Hot is intense, instructive, humorous, and brutally honest, and puts readers in the cockpit of the most lethal helicopter in the world as Slade learns on the job, combating a tenacious enemy against all odds in the most challenging environment imaginable. Cleared Hot can be found for purchase at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and at his website, clearedhot.info. So check it out. Definitely an awesome read. And stay tuned. The audiobook hopefully will be coming out soon. So back to the podcast. Do you have any pieces of advice for your fellow veterans, those who are currently serving, and maybe they're struggling as well?
Yeah, I think something that we can apply on right from the start in any given day is, and this is not rocket science, so you're going to be like, "Well, duh," but it really is important, and it is develop an attitude of gratitude. Because I don't care what position you're in, if you're feeling those negative sentiments, those negative emotions, which we all feel sometimes, and it's okay to feel that's part of being human. But sticking in them and dwelling in them is detrimental to our health.
Yeah.
And it is impossible for you to be angry and grateful at the same time. It is impossible for you to be super down and grateful at the same time. They just won't exist in the same space. So it's a really simple, but sometimes very difficult, a really simple math equation. Add this, it subtracts that, right?
Right.
And I know that it sounds simple and it's not always simple in its application. So I really encourage people to foster a habit, create a habit of being grateful. And I don't care if it's get up in the morning, write down 3 things that you're grateful for yesterday and 3 things you're going to be grateful for today. And at the end of the day, do the same thing. That's a good one that I've seen a lot of people do. My son and I, we drive to school and we do this thing called grateful where we have to say what we're grateful for, 3 things. And we have to say why. And they can't repeat, right? And we've been doing it for years. And he taught me a lesson one day on this. And my son is adopted. He's African American. I've had him since day one, though. So I always tell people I got him wet. He's mine. But at 6 years old, it was Martin Luther King. Well, it was close to Martin Luther King Day, and they were learning about it in school. And he said, "Buddy, you know who Martin Luther King is?" I'm like, "Yep, heard of the guy. I know who he is." He's like, "He was a pretty big deal." I'm like, "Sure was. He saved the world," is what he told me. And I was like, "In a way, yeah, he did." He goes, he gave a speech. I said, "Yeah, I'm aware he gave a speech." He goes, "Can we listen to it?" And I was like, "Sure." 6-year-old wants to listen to Martin Luther King's speech. This is awesome. So on our way, we pull it up. He's listening to it. Now it's the abridged version, not the full version, because otherwise it would have been a long time. But it was the part, the emotional from the hills of, and it was getting into it, and he was into it. It ended. He goes, "That was awesome." I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." He goes, "Can I listen to it again?" And I'm like, "Yes, you can listen to it again." So he listens to it again. And then he says, "Can we do grateful?" And I think I know where he's going with this because I'm like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I like where he's going with this. This is awesome." And I was like, "Sure, we can go with grateful." He's like, "Can I go first?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course you can go first." And he's like, "I'm grateful for Martin Luther King." And now that part I anticipated. I was like, "Okay, that's what I thought you'd say." Now, why? Why are you grateful for Martin Luther King? This part I did not anticipate, and it knocked me on my butt. He said, "Because of what Martin Luther King did, I can be your son."
Wow.
Tell me that's not powerful coming from a 6-year-old.
That is powerful. Wow.
And
6 years
it
old?
illustrated to
It's
me
amazing.
how powerful gratitude is. Because I had known about Martin Luther King since I was 6 years old, but I had not fully appreciated the man's contribution and probably still don't, but I definitely do more than I did because a 6-year-old pointed out something that I didn't even connect. Gratitude is a very powerful thing. I would encourage anybody to incorporate it in a daily basis, and you will start to see the other stuff get pushed away.
Yeah. I do grateful too every single day. I get up
Yeah,
and
it becomes it's a
I have a
muscle. If you
grateful
exercise it, it
list.
becomes natural. But at
Yeah,
first, it's tough.
it
It's
is.
your first curl. Your first curl, you got to maybe you're just using the bar. But if you keep
True.
doing it, you start throwing some weights on there.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are things that I'm grateful for every day. And I thank God for them, you know.
Yeah,
But then there's other stuff that I add and you're right, it definitely keeps the negativity out, you know. And even through the day I have to remind myself too.
yeah,
But
yeah. No, and somebody told me one time, they're like, even if it's something as simple as the sun coming up, and I was like, you say that simple, but what if it didn't?
true.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not that simple. That's a big deal.
It
That's a
is a
big
big
deal.
deal.
That happens
It
every
is.
day that we
Yes.
take for granted. Because if it
Yeah.
didn't, it'd be a big deal.
We'd know.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on and sharing some very special, special moments about your service and all that you did. Really emotional, amazing stuff. Thank you. Where can people connect with you? And more importantly, where can they buy your amazing book that I'm sure it, and I'm just going to hold it up here because I happen to have a copy.
That's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. So where can,
I think
you can
I have a website. It's www.clearedhot.info. You can definitely order it there, but you're going to get it faster. I hate to say it. You're going to get it faster through Amazon. Right?
Got it. Yeah.
So if you go on Amazon, you'll get the book faster just because the fulfillment said Amazon somehow figured this out more than we have. Right. So you can get it there. You can hit me on all the social medias as well. I'll leave links with you that you can add to this, but yeah, that's where you can go get it. And I want to hear what people think when they read it. So you can reach out to me because I've heard some amazing stories, and it's just this awesome circle that I love to complete. So.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, looking at it, just why you believe a prepared mind can change the way you look at life and minimize PTSD. So I love that. Very interesting. I think it's awesome. Yes. I think a lot of veterans can benefit from reading this book.
Yeah, no, I've had nothing but great feedback, honestly. And there's even been some unintended consequences. People are like, "Oh, this taught me this." And I was like, "Man, I wasn't even trying to teach that." That's awesome.
Well,
so it's been really awesome. And the audiobook, depending on when this airs, the audiobook will be out too.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's great. So, okay. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for taking the time and sharing your amazing story. It was very heartfelt, and thank you for, speaking to educating us civilians and sharing with your fellow veterans. An amazing, amazing story. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special episode of Tactical Treasures, where we've been speaking to Brian Slade, who has held combat positions in the Army and the Air Force with over 25 years of combined service and has received Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star, and 14 Combat Air Medals for his outstanding service. He is the author of this book, Cleared Hot. Cleared Hot offers readers an exhilarating ride while giving them tools they can use to prepare for and survive the traumas of their own lives. Cleared Hot is intense, instructive, humorous, and brutally honest, and puts readers in the cockpit of the most lethal helicopter in the world as Slade learns on the job, combating a tenacious enemy against all odds in the most challenging environment imaginable. Cleared Hot can be found for purchase at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and at his website, clearedhot.info. So I encourage you to check it out and stay tuned. The audio book hopefully will be coming out soon. So thank you so much for joining us for this podcast, and we'll see you next time.